Jingle Bell Rock. Jingle bells swing.
Mean Girls is the iconic 2004 teen revenge romp written by Tina Fey and directed by Mark Waters. It's not just the sharp writing, plotting, and acting that makes this film such a classic. It's also the question that we have all secretly wondered. Wouldn't it be nice to give the mean girls a taste of their own medicine? And surprisingly, the answer the film gives is no. How do the sayings go? Revenge is sweet. They got their just desserts. Revenge is a dish best served cold. It's interesting how commonly revenge is connected to food, as if it is something that we hunger for. In fact, a Swiss study found that the anticipation of enacting revenge causes a rush of neural activity in an area of the brain known to process rewards, meaning there is an actual physiological incentive to the act of anticipating revenge. A commonly accepted explanation for why we find revenge narratives so satisfying is the theory of catharsis. Unfortunately, research ultimately failed to uphold the theory of catharsis. A 2002 study conducted by Brad Bushman actually found that cathartic aggression not only failed to reduce subsequent aggression, but in fact increased it. With regards to revenge, research has found that seeking out revenge can actually prolong the unpleasantness of the original offense, fail to satisfy one's thirst for vengeance, and perpetuate a cycle of retaliation. With the widespread popularity of revenge films and public thirst for fictional revenge narratives, the question becomes whether the evidence that revenge is not satisfying in real life should mold how we portray it in fiction. Should our revenge romps actually be cautionary anti-revenge tales? And is that anywhere near as fun? The ideal anti-revenge story both soothes our initial desire for catharsis and ultimately replaces the longing for revenge with something a little healthier. Wait, I hear you saying. Mean Girls isn't a revenge film. At no point does Uma Thurman shish kebab a lady with a katana. Well, let's break down the key elements of a revenge narrative and why Mean Girls is set up as a potentially satisfying revenge plot.
Regina George. How do I even begin to explain Regina George?
Regina George isn't just a mean girl. She is the mean girl. Regina frequently cheats on her boyfriend. She pretends to be nice so she can make fun of people behind their backs.
I love your skirt. Where did you get it?
It was my mom's in the 80s.
Vintage. So adorable.
Thanks.
That is the ugliest effing skirt I've ever seen.
Even amongst her friends, Regina cannot help but play power games and cause drama. Regina uses her social power to make the people around her feel insecure and small. She is designed for the audience to hate her. And the revenge plot set up against her is initially sympathetic because it is meant to reduce the undue social power she has.
It's Katie. C-A-D-Y.
Yeah, I'm gonna call you Caddy.
Katie Heron has been homeschooled her entire life, meaning she is unfamiliar with what she dubs the girl world and the rules that govern her new environment. Although Katie is very smart academically, she lacks the social knowledge of her peers and struggles to fit in at North Shore High School. Katie is desperate for friends, and frequently too meek to speak up in situations where she sees Regina behaving badly. However, Katie does have a strong moral compass and rejects Janice's initial proposal for a revenge plot against Regina George. Katie's relative naivety and innocence compared to the other characters in Mean Girls makes Regina's betrayal of her especially egregious because Regina knows Katie is not socially savvy and takes advantage of her trust to ruin Katie's chances at dating Aaron Samuels.
How could Janice hate Regina? She was such a good...
Slut! This one's a little complicated. The initial violation of the revenge project that takes up a majority of the film's runtime is Regina's betrayal of Katie. However, Regina is also responsible for humiliating her former best friend Janice Ian in the 8th grade, and a whole lot of other stuff.
How many of you have ever felt personally victimized by Regina George?
The greatest people you will ever meet.
Look, she's not gonna get away with this again, okay? We're gonna do something.
We are?
Victims frequently become avengers in the revenge plot. Katie and Janice do this in Mean Girls.
Regina George is an evil dictator. Now, how do you overthrow a dictator? You cut off her resources. Regina would be nothing without her high-status man candy, technically good physique, an ignorant band of loyal followers. Now, Caddy, if we want this to work, you are gonna have to keep hanging out with them like nothing is wrong. Can you do it?
I can do it.
Okay, let's rock this bitch.
Great, so we're all on the same page. Mean Girls is a revenge flick. But it's also more than that. Although Katie is initially a very sympathetic Avenger, she quickly burns through the goodwill the audience has for her as she pays the social cost for seeking revenge.
You try to act like you're so innocent. Like Aaron Samuels, for example, he broke up with Regina, and guess what? He still doesn't want you. So why are you still messing with Regina, Katie? I'll tell you why, because you are a mean girl. You're a bitch.
Katie's transformation from innocent to plastic makes a lot of sense in light of how people who believe in just systems tend to react to tragedy. A research team led by Cheryl Kaiser in 2001 found that the more a person believed in a just world before the September 11 attacks, the more this person experienced stress after them, and the greater this person's desire for revenge. Katie's initial innocence then becomes something she feels she has to overcome in order to survive in the new unjust girl world she has been thrust into. Essentially, the audience is at first given very clear signals who they are meant to sympathize with, that minimize the humanity of the villain and lionize the qualities of the Avenger. However, as the film goes on, these roles become more ambiguous as Katie pursues revenge beyond what is reasonable for the original offense and lets her vengeance transform her into a manipulative, mean person. As Katie steps into the role of the villain, Regina takes the opportunity to strike back and ruin Katie's life in return, beginning a new revenge project and continuing the cycle of vengeance. It is very common for revenge projects to become complicated because when people are Avengers, they believe their actions had fairly restored equity to the relationship, and when they are the recipients of revenge, they consider the payback excessive. The movie actually demonstrates this phenomenon through an exercise led by Miss Norbury.
I want you to raise your hand if you have ever had a girl say something bad about you behind your back. And this time, I want you to raise your hand if you have ever said anything about a friend behind her back. There's been some girl-on-girl crime here.
Despite the initial violation of the film's plot being Regina's bad behavior, this segment of the film makes it clear that Regina is not the problem, just a particularly bad manifestation of the issues of Girl World. It's also vital that the junior girls' brief moment of catharsis during their violent outbreak doesn't actually solve any of the underlying aggression between them. Although Miss Norbury correctly identifies the problem, it is clear that neither she nor the other teachers have the tools necessary to completely correct it. The solution the film provides for moving past this cycle of retribution is taking responsibility for one's actions. Katie admits her role in creating the burn book, makes amends to the people she's hurt, and moves on from her fixation on the original violation and her need for revenge.
When you get bit by a snake, you're supposed to suck the poison out. That's what I had to do. Suck all the poison out of my life.
Although the audience begins the story wanting to see Regina get her comeuppance, ultimately Katie abandoning revenge and piecing her life back together becomes the most satisfying resolution, because Katie is rewarded by regaining her friendships, winning over Aaron Samuels, and making peace with Regina George. Mean Girls does not only implicitly criticize revenge by emphasizing the negative social and emotional consequences of seeking revenge, but it also goes on to show the audience what a healthy response when dealing with conflict and wrongdoing looks like. Finally, Girl World is at peace. Mean Girls is the ideal anti-revenge film because it deals with a relatable revenge narrative that is extremely applicable to viewers' lives. Most people don't have to grapple with whether or not to avenge their slain father, but almost everyone has had to decide whether or not to pursue payback for petty grievances within their peer groups. What makes Mean Girls stand out is that it does not just criticize revenge as a method of problem solving, but it also shows the audience how Katie successfully breaks the cycle of revenge and the social benefits of not engaging in retributive actions. The film ends with each character having found a new and healthier status quo, even offering Regina George a future in which she is just as formidable, but no longer a villain. Mean Girls shows us the way the world could be if we take responsibility for our actions, communicate, and choose to behave better than the villains in our lives.